Hey everyone, it's Wolfgang. I want to talk about how I got around being pigeonholed by my resume. I call this finally no boss for once, because ultimately what I did along this journey is I transitioned to no longer having a boss. That was about 3 years out of college. It started because when I got my first job out of college, it became really clear that there was this resume typecasting going on. It's sort of like in the movie business, if an actor gets really famous for doing gangster roles, if a casting director is trying to cast actors for a movie, the person who's very famous for gangster roles probably will not get cast if the film is a romantic comedy. So it's the same idea. That first job out of college, I realized there was this resume typecasting problem. So along the way of solving that problem, I eliminated my boss. If you think about it, having a boss is like having parents. When we turn 18, we're legally an adult. Most of us are wondering what we're really capable of. And if you talk to wealthy, famous people, a lot of them came from disadvantaged backgrounds whose friends and family would not have expected them to achieve what they achieved. Oprah Winfrey's a good example. She came from a disadvantaged background. So when we turn 18, we're no longer under parental control legally, and we all wonder what we're capable of. When you have a boss, it's like having a parent again, because most of us are conscientious about the work that we do enough to, when we realize we need some improvement, we take it upon ourselves to improve the actions we're taking. We're conscientious. Sometimes you can have a boss who can act like a parent and will not be very patient with you, potentially, not all the time, not all bosses are like that, but they may not be as patient with you as you are with yourself. It's better to not have a boss, the same as no longer having direct parental control when you turn 18. Okay, so I realized that was true when I got that first job, and I didn't know it at the time that I'd end up at this step, self-employment. I was only kind of unhappy with the resume typecasting. So here's how this works. There's a first step, and then there's a second step. So I'm going to go through the steps one at a time. And when you take these steps, you do it incrementally. You become patient with yourself. You don't rush it. And you can actually move from having a boss to having no boss if you follow this process. So the first thing I wanted to do when I got that first job, I wanted to do more work, more interesting work. It was not available at that employer. And I knew that if I started looking for another job, employers would hire me for the old job only. And I didn't want to end up doing the same kind of work. Employers, while they could train people, if they have a choice between somebody on the job market who's fully trained and someone who's not, they're going to take the fully trained person because they don't have to train them, and they avoid the expense of training the person. So employers will hire you for your old job, what's on your resume. That's the resume typecasting. You get pigeonholed for what you've already done, and if you don't want to keep doing the same job, you have to beat the resume typecasting. So this is the first step in this process. When I started this, my primary goal was to get more interesting work that was not available. I started a side job, nights and weekends. I got my first customer, and I acquired new skills to sell to customers that I obtained. I could not apply the skills in my current job. I still had that job, my primary job out of college, but I started to improve my skills in an area that was in demand in the marketplace, that I could sell to customers that I found on my own. And I could put those new skills on my resume legitimately because I actually had experience in them. The fact that I got the experience on my own was good because employers like to see initiative. And the way it works is this. When you're applying for a job, let's say the hiring manager says, you worked at X company. They don't do this kind of work. How did you pick up those skills? They like to see initiative. So you tell them straight up, this is the truth. I wanted to contribute more at my last job. There was no opportunity to do that. So I took a side gig. The skills that I gained doing that for my own customer that I found qualified me for more. So that tells the employer, this is a go-getter. This is a person who takes it upon themselves to give up their free time to improve their employability. A lot of employers like initiative. So, and besides, you have the experience. So they can't really complain that, I don't like you because you went out and you picked up skills the non-traditional way. They're not going to say that. They're going to say you're a go-getter. You figured out a novel way to pick up skills outside of your regular job, you're hired. So that's the first step. A lot of people, if you want to, you can stop there. This is a technique to escape the resume typecasting. You just take it upon yourself to start a side gig, place ads to get customers, apply the skills and acquire them and polish them for the customers that you find. And then you can put those skills on your resume, and you can transition to a better job at higher pay. So what I did, though, is once I had gone through this process and I had gotten my own customer, I decided I wanted to go full-time self-employment. And I decided that I did not need a company to supply customers who would then supply me with the work. In other words, if you think about it, if you're an employee working at a company, the company is a middleman. The company is the middleman finding customers, and you do the work, right? Is your boss doing the work? No. Is the company doing the work? No. Who's doing the work? You are. The company finds the customers, you do the work, right? So let's cut out the middleman. Let's go to full-time self-employment. I don't need a company to supply customers who will then supply me with work. I will find my own customers. I mean, once you do this one time and you realize there's customers out there, all I have to do is get off my rear end and try to find one, and I can work directly for customers without my boss being involved. So I didn't want a boss. I didn't want resume typecasting. So I went from this step to this step, and I became self-employed about 3 years out of college. No longer had a boss. So here are some careers that are that fit this process, that are a good match for this process. Service careers generally. If you're a bookkeeper working at a bookkeeping firm, your bookkeeping firm is finding customers for you, and you're doing the work, right? So you can find your own customers, and you can do bookkeeping for your own customers. Same with accountants. Same with tax prep. If you're a enrolled agent, if you're a CPA, if you're a tax preparer, you can find your own customers. I mean, it wasn't that hard back when I did this, and the internet was nothing like it is today. I was using dice.com. I was using recruiters, newspaper ads. Nowadays, there's a lot more channels for finding customers. So any service career like this, where you can say to yourself, just ask, could I do work for the customer without my boss employer? If you can answer that yes, then you have a middleman. And the middleman is your boss and the company you work at. And you can say to yourself, it is worth it for me to actually take a small cut in pay temporarily for that first customer, because when you do this, you can tell that first customer, look, I'm trying to acquire this new skill. I'm willing to do it for a low rate, or I'm willing to do it pro bono, that's free, in exchange for a good reference if you're happy with the work that I do for you. It's worth it to cut off the middleman, because what you're going to do is you're going to do this a couple times, and you're going to get confidence that you can do it on your own, and then you'll never go back. Because after I made that transition, I never went back to, I've been self-employed since then. 3 years out of college, no more boss. So for me, it wasn't just the resume typecasting, it was the control aspect. I wanted to make sure that there was no entity like a company limiting what I could do. I wasn't sure what I was capable of, but I knew I didn't want someone limiting me. So how do you start this? So here's a way to get started in this process. Make a list of all the companies who do the work that you're capable of in your area. Pretty easy to compile that list. Reach out to them and tell them, when someone doesn't show up, call me. You'd be working as a 1099. You'll have to charge a higher rate of pay. That might be counterintuitive, but here's why. When you're working on a short-term basis, the employer is not paying Medicare tax, is not paying Social Security tax. They're not paying payroll taxes, so you'll charge a higher rate. For the first customer, are you going to feel confident about doing that? Maybe not. I didn't. That first customer that I had, was I underpaid? Yes, I was underpaid. I mean, I was trying to get skills in a new area. The employer needed somebody short term. For the sake of company morale, employers cannot hire somebody for a month or two and then fire them. Because it affects morale for all the other employers, for all the other employees at the company. So they generally will hire a temporary person on a 1099. And so you'll feel confident about charging a higher rate after you do one or two jobs for the customers that you find. You'll figure out how much to charge. The shorter the time duration is, the more you should charge. To give you an example, in the mid-90s, I had a 1 week long assignment. I charged them $15,000. They didn't blink an eye. And the reason is Companies need a short-term skill, and they are not in a position to need to hire that skill full-time. They need it for a short time, and the trade-off is you can charge them a lot because they avoid the hit to morale of employees. If they went out to the job market and hired an employee full-time and then got the work out of them and then fired them right away, it would hurt the morale of all their other employees. So they don't mind paying a higher rate. You may not know how much to charge until you do a few jobs. So work a few jobs to know what time duration, what minimum time duration you want, and how much to charge. The other thing you should do, I did not do this, is to have some savings. When I made this transition, I was not long out of college. I didn't have a lot. I had bought a rental property, and my wife was working, so we had two incomes, so it was not a big deal. But it was still some apprehension there about this issue. You should try to have some savings because the amount of time it takes to find customers, it's a little bit, sometimes it's hard to know. It depends on how big of an area you live in, what the economy is like. So having savings is a good idea. But that's pretty much the step, the process. For me, it started off as I wanted to do more than I was being allowed to or could possibly do. I didn't like resume typecasting, so I knew I couldn't just find a new job because I'd be typecast with what I was doing at my old job. So I did this step. I found my own work, and then I started doing it full time. And it's been very gratifying not to have a boss all these years because it's sort of like having a parent. And there's nothing wrong with having parents, but at some point, you want to be self-determined. You want to have full control of what you do. And so not having a boss, finally, no boss for once, maybe once and for all, no more boss. So you can do this. And if you have a service career, and if you're not sure if you could do it, just ask this question. Could I do the work for your customer without the boss or the employer? If it's just a matter of finding the customer, pick up that skill, learn how to find your own customers, and do it, do it slowly. Do this. You could say, I'm going to take a year or two. I'm going to find one customer or two. I'm going to see if I'm happy with that before you do it full time. If you have any questions about anything here, please post in the comments and I'll try to answer them. Okay. And I really want to thank everyone for watching and have a great day.